When Assassin's Creed Shadows got delayed, many gamers hoped that there wouldn't be another catastrophic flop in 2024. But then, Bandai Namco and Reflector Entertainment surprised us with Unknown 9, Awakening. With a record low user score of 1.7 and a peak concurrent player count on Steam that hasn't even surpassed the 300, many are blaming this failure on its connection to Sweet Baby Inc. But is it really true that Unknown 9 Awakening flopped right out of the gate because of Sweet Baby Inc.'s involvement? Let's dive into the details and break it down in today's video. The first question most people ask when they hear about Unknown 9, Awakening is likely, what kind of game is this? And why haven't I heard of it before? Reflector actually put together an ambitious marketing campaign for this game. But the problem was that it went in the wrong direction from the start, which ultimately led to its downfall. First revealed at Gamescom 2020, Unknown 9 Awakening took home the Best Announcement Award. Riding high on that momentum, Reflector Entertainment tried to promote the entire universe of the game across multiple platforms. But this was a risky move. Take Marvel, for instance. It took many groundbreaking successes before they could create their own cinematic universe. In contrast, instead of focusing on polishing and promoting its main project to build a foundation for future development, Reflector Entertainment became too invested in the overarching universe and story, something that no one cared about at all. When evaluating Unknown 9 Awakening as a standalone project, what most people care about is the gameplay, not the story or setting. Take Devil May Cry as an example. The story isn't too complicated, but the gameplay is excellent, making it a highly regarded franchise. Reflector Entertainment, however, didn't see it that way. They treated Unknown 9 Awakening as a stepping stone to build the Unknown 9 universe. As a result, the game's promotional materials didn't stand out enough to capture players' attention. When the announcement trailer dropped back in March 2024, it didn't generate much buzz among gamers. 7 months later, that video had only 15,000 views. To be blunt, the trailer wasn't anything special. It mostly featured re-rendered cutscenes with dialogue introducing a basic storyline. The most emphasized gameplay element was the stepping mechanic, where players can possess others and control them for a short period. Close to the release date, Bandai released a 4-minute overview trailer with more information and visuals. But it wasn't particularly impressive. Compare this to another flop, Forspoken. At least Square Enix managed to put out a decent trailer that generated interest before the game's release. Unfortunately, when Forspoken finally launched, it ended up disappointing people. Unknown 9 Awakening holds a crucial role as the largest project in Reflector Entertainment's Unknown 9 universe. The game's success was supposed to determine the future of the entire series, so Reflector Entertainment aimed to craft a standalone story, gradually revealing the lore to generate interest in their other products and expand the universe. But no, they prioritized world building and lore above everything else. As soon as you hit the start button, the game immediately bombards you with an overwhelming amount of lore. The way this information is presented is painfully dull. Drawings move across the screen in a way that feels like a tedious PowerPoint presentation, accompanied by a monotonous narrator droning on about cycles of life and reincarnation. This forces the player to guess and grapple with the game's background before they even begin playing. The reason behind this confusing approach is that key information about the game's world, terminology, and how the protagonist gains their powers is scattered across external content such as podcasts, scripts, comics, and novels. Jumping straight into the game without this context leaves players drowning in a sea of overwhelming information. After using 100% of my brain power, I finally managed to understand what the game was trying to tell me. Essentially, the game presents the idea that the natural cycle of rise and fall governs life, but a certain civilization wants to escape this cycle and achieve eternal existence. Out of nowhere, 9 individuals, known as the Unknown 9, emerge with great power, determined to overthrow this civilization and restore the natural order. The game centers around Haruna, a quester with the ability to enter a mysterious dimension called the Fold, which exists parallel to our world. Eventually, Haruna becomes one of the Unknown 9. Haruna's master, Reika, was murdered by Vincent Lichter, the leader of the Ascendants, a faction that seeks to use the Fold to alter the course of human history. This sets Haruna on a path of revenge. In the game, it takes thousands of lines of dialogue and an overwhelming number of cutscenes to establish this backstory. The sheer volume of cutscenes, which not only deliver the main storyline but also add side information and lore along with character development, is staggering. This approach is clumsy because players are likely to feel overwhelmed, unsure which information is crucial to remember to follow the main events. Unknown 9. Awakening jumbles everything together, even including some completely pointless scenes that seem to serve no purpose in the game. For example, this opening scene has you guiding the character down a straight path for no apparent reason, only for it to be revealed as a meaningless dream sequence. One major flaw in the storyline of Unknown 9. Awakening is how the character's actions often contradict basic logic, making them feel forced and unnatural. For example, in a scene involving Reika, the protagonist's master, she deliberately puts herself in a weak position, leading to her death at the hands of the villain, Vincent Lichter. Haruna, who's hiding nearby, suddenly rushes out, even though she has the ability to use stepping from a safe distance to save her master. Even more baffling is when the villain decides to let Haruna escape instead of finishing her off. Was the game afraid to show a white male villain attacking a woman of color? And Haruna actually runs away without even trying to fight back. Why didn't she just stay hidden in the first place instead of jumping out and do nothing? To make matters worse, the protagonist Haruna's personality is written in a way that makes it difficult for players to sympathize with or even like her. She constantly rambles on about meaningless things, which becomes annoying fast. Then, when she finally needs to engage in real dialogue like a normal person, she suddenly clams up. The way the story is executed feels amateurish, like a fanfiction writer trying too hard to be a game script writer. The lore is shoved down the player's throat, regardless of whether they're interested or not. Meanwhile, the protagonist behaves like someone with severe antisocial tendencies, so what's left to keep players invested? Unknown 9. Awakening falls under the action-adventure genre, which is notoriously difficult to execute perfectly. If you look at successful games in this genre, such as Uncharted, God of War, The Last of Us, and Tomb Raider, they balance two key elements, story and gameplay. Since Unknown 9, Awakening completely fails in the story department. How does it fare in terms of gameplay? The typical loop in action-adventure games involves exploration, puzzles, combat, and boss battles. For instance, in Uncharted, you guide Nathan Drake through terrain, fight enemies, and then face a boss. These sections flow seamlessly, delivering both gameplay and story in a smooth, cohesive way. Unknown 9 Awakening tries to follow this formula, but does so in a clumsy, dull, and uninspired manner. During the exploration sections, the only thing players can do is hold down the forward button. When you reach a jump, you press the jump button. The protagonist's running speed is painfully slow, and the stiff robotic animations make the experience even more frustrating. And when you have to travel with other characters, you're forced to slow down so they can keep up. There are also meaningless segments like using night vision to navigate through sandstorms or dark caves, and the night vision forces the character to walk even slower than normal. Later on, the map opens up slightly with different rooms to explore, but even this attempt at boosting exploration doesn't amount to much. The gameplay remains basic. Just run to a location and press a button to complete tasks. After completing the exploration phase, it's time to discuss the combat aspect. One of the most heavily promoted features of Unknown 9, Awakening, is the stepping mechanic. Haruna has the ability to possess enemies to move them and perform actions based on the abilities of the possessed. The strange part is that Haruna can only use guns when in stepping mode. She can't pick up a gun lying on the ground and use it herself. For elite enemies or bosses, stepping doesn't work because they're too strong. This mechanic isn't particularly innovative or groundbreaking either. For example, in Dishonored, a game that came out in 2012, the possession ability of Corvo Attano offers far more freedom to players compared to stepping. Oddly enough, to compensate for the limitations of stepping, Haruna is quite powerful physically. Landing a few regular punches can drain the enemy's health quickly. This raises the question, why even bother with stepping to take down a couple of enemies when you could just punch your way through all of them like a boxer? As I mentioned earlier, the game's animations are awful, and this applies to combat as well. Haruna's attack and dodge animations are sluggish and clunky, making the whole process feel slow. In most cases, you'll be facing multiple enemies, and it's common to miss your target even after carefully directing your attacks. Using the lock-on feature limits your control over the battle, leaving you vulnerable to being shot from behind without enough time to dodge. When trying to combine stepping with direct combat, the lengthy possession animation breaks the flow of the battle. These issues make combat, while quick at eliminating enemies, an overall painful experience for the player. What about stealth? You'd think sneaking up on enemies would be fun, right? Unfortunately, it's even worse. For a good stealth system to work, enemies need to have artificial intelligence that is just dumb enough for the player to manipulate. In most stealth games, AI typically reacts to two main senses, sight and sound. Sure, the guards in Unknown 9 and Awakening can do that much, but when it comes to more complex behaviors, like detecting changes in the environment or utilizing darkness, they fall short. I used stealth to disrupt the environment, and the guards had no idea what was happening. They didn't even bother to investigate suspicious areas, like tall grass, to check for potential threats. Another mechanic worth mentioning is the push and pull ability. This is implemented in a very basic way, limited to pushing enemies off high ledges or into explosive barrels and burning areas. Pulling, as expected, simply pulls enemies closer, so you can easily execute melee combos. This feature seems to take inspiration from Dishonored, but it's poorly executed. In Dishonored, you could do creative and interesting things with these abilities, but here it feels lackluster. I still found myself abusing this mechanic for one reason. It has the ability to cancel enemy attack animations, even with bosses. For instance, the very first proper boss has an attack where it charges up and fires multiple projectiles. I just pulled it toward me, canceled the attack animation, and kept punching it. I don't even know what this boss's full moveset is, because I kept canceling its attack so consistently that it never got the chance to fight back, making the battle boringly easy. I didn't have the patience to finish the entire game, but perhaps later bosses might resist the push and pull mechanic. But even then, as long as they don't one-shot me, I can handle 10 of them because the game's healing mechanic is ridiculously forgiving. If your health is low, just press X to heal, and the only cost is stamina, which regenerates over time or by hitting enemies. So if the story is bad and the gameplay isn't good either, why play Unknown 9 Awakening? For the visuals, the character models, and the music. This game fails to deliver in every category I've mentioned so far. Visuals are the first thing that hits players and can shape their impression of a game right from launch. Sometimes we're even misled into pre-ordering games just because the graphics look amazing. Remember when Ubisoft tricked everyone with Watch Dogs at E3 2012? While Unknown 9 Awakening doesn't have visuals as groundbreaking as that. At least the trailer made it look like a game released in 2024 until you actually install it and start playing. The graphics are shockingly bad, even on the highest settings. It looks like an early PS3 or Xbox 360 game. The main character model isn't terrible, thanks to being scanned from Anya Chalotra, the actress who played Yennefer in The Witcher on Netflix. However, what really makes the game visually painful are the animations. The facial animations are especially bizarre. I'm not sure what kind of face capture they used, but the result is awful. Every character, including the protagonist, has these vacant, glassy eyes staring off into nothing, both during dialogue and in combat. There's almost no expression, making them feel like lifeless puppets delivering lines. Unknown 9 Awakening launched with just over 200 concurrent players on Steam, and now it's down to a few dozen. Many attribute this failure to the connection between Reflector Entertainment and Sweet Baby Inc., the so-called villain in the ears of most gamers worldwide. Through the game's credits, the community discovered that David Bedard and Kim Belair, founders of Sweet Baby Inc., had previously worked at Reflector Entertainment and were involved in the development of Unknown 9 Awakening. Given Sweet Baby's controversial reputation over the past few years, any project they touch is scrutinized by gamers to see if any woke ideologies have been inserted. But as my review shows, Unknown 9 Awakening is terrible in every possible way. This is a prime example of how a poor quality product fails on its own, without needing to blame any woke factor. In reality, gamers don't care that much about whether something is woke or not when the game is this bad. That wraps up this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to HoniGAME. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.